Okay, thank you. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:32 on November the 14th. I am going, if nobody objects, to allow our visitor to get out before having to be bored to death with some of our chatter. We're going to go to the on-site insight report just after the CSA report, if that's okay.
No plans.
So we're going to skip to CSA and then come back to community comments after the on-site insight report. Does that work?
He's going first, right?
You're going first.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. What we have right now, last month we held the Monster Mash. We had about 175 kids show up. Yeah. A lot of kids. And they all wore their costumes and they made a lot to dance around a lot, and I'm sure the parents were glad not to have them for a couple of hours. This past Thursday, we had the Harvest Luncheon, which was held at the Pilgrim Church in conjunction with the Council on Aging, and that went really well. We had about, I think, 40 seniors, maybe a few more, show up to that, and they were very, very happy. And this Friday, we are holding Family Game Night. We did that last year for the first time. Game Right, I'm sure you're familiar with the company. They have like educational games for all ages, and they provide these games and things can come out and play. And if they enjoy them, they can purchase them. Okay. Some of the enrichment programs we've had with like the Wampanoag came in for grade 2, and then they had the States of Matter, someone from Museum of Science. And for grade 5, the author Gregory Moan came in. I guess he does popular science. And that's pretty much it for now. December's pretty quiet.
Okay, all right. Whoa, it's loud.
Save the date for the CSA Pancake
Oh, yes, the
Breakfast
pancake.
is Saturday,
January
January 20th, so put it in your calendars.
We're going to do PJs.
Oh,
We're going to try.
How did the fundraising go?
Huh?
How did the fall fundraiser?
I don't have the final numbers for that. I don't have any, because the online sales just ended the last week. So,
And the coupon books. But I mean, I was going to say they
yeah,
can,
we did do the coupon books.
we did coupon, or they did coupon books, which I've already used,
Great.
so,
That's all. And the directories.
the directories.
Just having
they've gone to print.
Yes.
Good.
Great,
I
thank,
asked about them.
so we're super loud here?
Yeah, we're getting mic'd from all directions.
It's open dialogue.
I can't whisper anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Do we need to turn the volume down?
No, don't speak too close to the mic.
Back up, Greg.
Go out to the road.
Thank you very much. And you don't need to feel, you don't need to feel compelled to endure the rest of the meeting. Thanks. All right, we're going to skip over to 6, the on-site insight report, and this is,
Steve, he knows.
all right, it's all yours, or Dawn,
So,
or
well,
whomever.
I'll just sort of set it up a little bit for you. I think Greg is probably the only one who was around when we had the last on-site insight presentation. So Steve is our consultant who worked with us for the sort of updated report. So it's been 5 years since we had our first report. He spent the day talking with Ralph and spending some time with Peter. When you get your final report, there'll be all brand-new photographs that you'll have if you ever want to go back and reminisce what all different areas of the school look like. But basically, it's a time to go and reassess what we've done, what new things have happened, and where we are with things that are already in existence. So I'll let Steve walk through the report for you. What you have as a handout is the summary page, which is up on the screen, and then just the 20-year sort of overview summary. we get the final report, it's much more comprehensive, and you'll see some of the pages on the screen. He's going to tell you a little bit how that works, but I'll turn it over to Steve to spend some time talking about the report.
So I'll start with what you guys already have right there and where all those numbers come from. So you'll see the details sort of in the back. For those of you who don't know, capital needs assessment is just basically a study of what is at a property, how much of what everything is, and how old is it, and when does it need to be replaced. So the first thing you do, which we did 5 years ago, was find out what is at the property. How much asphalt, how much concrete, how much brick, how much roof, how many windows, how much VCT, how much everything inside the building, everything outside the building, all the surface. So that's pretty much what this report is. And it just basically gives you a 20-year view of when things will need to be replaced and about what the cost will be in that year. We do a 20-year report to give you a good long view of what things will have to be done at a property. However, why do we update it every 5 years? Because things change. Things fail prematurely. Things sometimes last longer than you expect them to do. Then there's also changes in decisions of what you're going to do with a property. You decide to change the flooring. So if you have carpet and the last report has carpet replacement every 10 years, and then 3 years later, you know what, we're not going to do carpet anymore, we're going to do VCT. Well, that 10-year cycle now changes because VCT lasts 15 years. Or in this sense, you're now thinking about doing vinyl plank. Vinyl plank has a 20-year life. So you update the report to incorporate all the changes that you've decided to make inside or outside the property, plus any issues that have happened that are just unexpected, that you just don't plan for. So basically, this is just a summary of all the detail that's back here, okay? This is all your year one costs, and it's just by site systems, boiler maintenance, kitchen equipment, building mechanical, electrical, the exteriors, and the interiors. So this is all the anticipated year one cost if you followed the plan, or if nothing went wrong. This is all the cost, total cost from years 1 to 5, total cost from years 1 through 10, total cost from years 1 through 20. Right here, these pie charts are just a visual of each one of these columns. Okay? Just a visual pie chart of each one of these numbers. These bars are a visual of the annual summary from the next 2 pages of what you have. So all this is a visual of these 2 pages. And this gets a little more detail, line by line, year by year, in the different sections that we look at. Where do all these numbers come from? It comes from this detail here, which is the line by line, item by item, quantity, cost, current age, what the typical expected useful life is. Do the math, that determines when you would replace it. And then if you do it in 1 year or if you do it over a number of years. So just very simply, 105,550 square feet of asphalt parking, typically $2.50 to mill, and you're not completely rebuilding the base. It's just basically taking off 3 inches, new top coat, new finish coat. It's 19 years old now. Typically, it's a 20-year life. I would normally put in year 1, but in further discussions with Ralph and Don, we said, let's move it out. So you go with initially with the typical expected useful life, how old it is, and do the math, but then, you know, you refine the report based on what you guys are planning for financially. Other things might take precedence over, you know, asphalt, which is not it doesn't have to be done at year 20.
And it doesn't look like it needs to be done next year.
Right.
I mean, that's the main thing.
Yeah, it all depends on how well it's maintained, if there's any serious issues with weather, So everything has a range. There's an expected useful life, which is a single number, but of course, everything has a range depending on maintenance and how it's done.
Your pricing, how do you get your, I assume you get your pricing every year?
A lot of historical experience, but also RS Means, which does location adjustment. But, it all depends too on what quotes you get. Like Ralph is getting quotes from, is it from the town or something, but.
Yeah, we actually looked at this for the region, and he contacted the head of the Department of Highway in Dover and verified that that's about what he thought that was a really good
Okay.
price.
Yeah, and then if he came back and said, you know what, no, we could do it for $2 a square foot. We go back, change it, she calls me up, can you lower this to 2 and see what it looks like? And so, that's the thing about it, it's a spreadsheet, it can be adjusted based on your actual bids, national experience or historical experience. Sometimes I'll put a cost in and say, no, we got these for this, or we got this for that. So can you adjust that? And then these are just notes, just to give you, a little description of what this line is all about. So this is a year of action, okay? So this resurfacing is gonna happen in year 5. In 1 year means you're gonna do it all at once. As opposed to if I put a 3 there, you do a third every year. It would just take that total cost, divide it by 3, and spread it over 3 years. That's all that one is. But we're doing it all in year 5. So here's all your 20 years, there's the cost, $296,000. Why is it higher than this cost here? Because we increment 3% per year to account for inflation. If it's this much now, in 3 years or 10 years or 5 years, it's gonna be more because of inflation. Is it exactly 3% a year every year? No, but over the course of 20 years, we estimate it's gonna be, it averages out to about 3% a year. So it gives you, an estimated, inflationary figure. And then, again, here, this is just interim allowances for crack filling and restriping. We do that every 5 years. You don't do it in year 5, obviously, because you're resurfacing. So those costs would normally show up here. Why is the line blue? Okay. What we did was, initially this plan covered all of these items, and all of these costs rolled up into this summary here. But what Don and Ralph said, you know what, we really only want to see the total cost of everything that's covered in the capital budget. We have other budgets that cover, other different replacements, actions that happen to the property. But we don't want to just delete them from the report. We still want to see what the cost is and what the typical timing is, so we have, we can look at this and say, okay, we've got to do this at this time frame, or, this many years, but we don't want the cost to roll up into the total cost. So basically just left it here, but I just zeroed out the numbers on this side, because these are the numbers over here that roll up into the total costs. So everything that's in white is what's covered by the capital budget and what shows up in these costs. Everything in blue does not roll up into the total cost in this plan, but you can still say, okay, we've got this much, we should replace it at this time. So it's still there for planning purposes, but that's really all that the blue is. We just zeroed out the costs.
You have,
Okay.
I've got a couple questions, if you don't mind. Would a similar building have this similar cost, since you're looking at useful life and it's kind of sort of set time periods? I'm just curious if there's anything from your other clients that we could compare to, sort of average. Are we above average? Are we below average? What's the typical? Because I think we as a group in a town need to think about, hey, the building is worth X. You've got X amount of square feet. There's some number out there that's sort of a decent number that you might that you really have to spend every year to keep a building up to
It's
speed.
hard to say, I mean, you could compare it to Dover, but the schools are so different. One's a lot newer, Pine Hill's a lot older, you've got so many different issues with an older building.
Our costs are
And there's all
probably
different-
less than, or not, I mean, in another couple of years, they're.
But it's hard to
once
say
everything's
because
through its
remember
useful
these,
life, then you're sort of on the
Then you're everyone's
treadmill.
right.
these
Right.
total costs are depending on number of windows, volume of, square footage of roof and everything like that, which totally differs from building to building. Plus, if one building's windows are newer, they're gonna replace them farther out in the plan, which means the cost is gonna be much greater than a building that has older windows that are gonna replace it at the beginning of the plan.
So there's
So
no
it's
rule
hard-
of
you can't even
thumb, there's no rule of thumb to say if we have X square feet, 100,000 a year is a decent number. 75,000 a year is a normal,
Not
no way to
really,
do
it
that.
just really varies.
All right.
Varies, buildings vary depending on the age. If Pine School was pretty much very similar in design and size to Chickering, then yeah, you can compare them, but they're not. It's apples and oranges, really.
Additions at different times and.
Yeah. And especially, one thing about Chickering, it was built at the same time. So their replacement schedule and plan is going to be very different to a building that has very different, my God, Pine Hill varies from, what, the 70s up until,
The core building is 60 years old this
yeah.
year.
So there's such a wide range of ages in terms of windows. The windows were all done at different times, different sections were done at different times,
Okay.
roofs.
All right.
So,
Does anybody have any, this whole project, I don't know whose idea, has been a huge help to just keep us sort of on track with the capital budget. And we have tossed out a number of things. We've had a number of things we've done by grant, all the lights and things. I mean, it's been at least $75,000-$100,000 that we haven't had to spend. So it's really been a great tool for us.
And I think that's the key, is that it's a tool, and
Right.
Steve mentioned at some of the other school committee meetings, that this is really a guide, and you don't pull a year and say, this is what we're gonna do. You pull a year and say, okay, these are things we're gonna talk about. Do we need to do it this year? Do we need to push it out? And that's what your subcommittee does.
The
they
one
sit
thing
down with us.
which I think you've done is the couple of big scary numbers. I'd kind of like to get a real life, and your estimates have been good in a lot of cases, I guess, but when something comes in at like $750,000, I'd like to get a real number
Yeah.
on that. So so the asphalt, you said, that is a good number.
That is a good number.
Okay.
and any, again, like I said
It's a good
before,
number for like now.
Yeah.
That's, out 5 years.
any
too.
actual bids you get, we can refine the report based on that too.
So when you push this out, the asphalt out, or anything, if you pushed it out on this revised version, it's inflated.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. So the thing too is, you guys may decide, hey, we're gonna do it in year 2 instead. Doesn't really matter because you've accounted for the costs. And the cost that's out there is actually greater than it would be in year 2 because of the inflation. So if you're not gonna do everything as I have it planned, you're just not. But it's a good forward-looking tool to see what's coming down the pike. What big ticket items do we have? And let's get some bids, let's check some pricing, let's see if this is accurate, let's.
Any other questions? Well, great. Well, this is Steve's last visit of 3, so I thank him for his time and spending with us. And then we are just in the process of finalizing all the drafts. And when they're bound, we'll bring them to your December meeting, and that way it's a nice book for you to have.
I was gonna ask if we
Yeah,
had that, okay.
yeah, they just haven't been bound yet.
Yeah, the rest of it is just, there's pictures here, which basically
Yeah,
it's,
so you'll get the whole
not only
thing.
is, what's there, but also, pointing out, certain issues or items or things like that. And then the narrative is really just a line-by-line verbal description of every line back here. That's all it is, really.
And the other new thing we had in this year, as I see all the pictures of the standing mixer and the refrigerators, is we did expand our report for items in the cafeterias. because we know that's something that everyone's been asking to make sure we address in our capital plans, so we did incorporate that more fully in everyone's versions of this
And
plan.
that's, on that section, so for every school, I itemized every single piece of kitchen equipment. And again, everything under 10,000 we blued, because that would be done, but anything over 10,000, which really is only is the walk-in refrigerator box, the actual insulated box that you walk into, and the steam cooker.
Right. And some of the things we blued because we know, in discussions with Janelle, that the commercial stand mixer, if that ever goes, they would not replace it with another commercial stand mixer of $18,000. They would do something different. So to not distort the plan, we went and had all those blued.
Yes, remove that cost, and I put a note here,
Also, so
maintain
there would be
property,
no-
no future replacement per
Exactly.
management. So utilize these notes. If you're ever looking through it and you're just a little confused, utilize these notes, because it gives you a good description of what is going on in that line, just a brief description of what's going on in that line.
Okay.
Great.
That good?
Good, yeah.
And thanks,
I
Ruth.
have one question, and this is all coordinated, because this is Sherborn, so coordinated with the capital budgets committee in town, in the town of Sherborn, right? Because your onsite does
Yeah,
all of Sherborn. as
yeah,
well.
I did this building, I
All
did the
these
fire
buildings,
station, I did all of them, yeah.
Right.
So if there's paving to be done, you'd be recommending paving sort of multiple buildings. So if there were paving at different sites in town.
No, because it all depends on
It's not
the
coordinated.
age.
Yeah, we're not,
At that level?
it's not coordinated at that level. No.
It could,
It could be.
it certainly could
You
be.
have the report, yeah.
The capital committee, I'm assuming, Sherburne Capital Committee is going to see all these requests. But like in our case, it was sort of year one or year two, because it was at the end of the useful life. And we walk out there and say, doesn't look like it needs it, or maybe not all at one time. I think
You
it's-
know, a piece of rooftop equipment, typical 20-year life, you make it up there year 19, and the HVAC guy may say, you know what, you got another 5 years out of this. So you're not going to replace it, even though it's in the plan, but.
I would say, and that's what we've done with Pine Hill Roof, if they had repairs done to it. I mean, it's useful, I don't know what its useful life is, I think it seems to be near the end.
Yeah.
But went up, assessed it, made some repairs, and feel like we've got another X number of years out of it, so.
Again, to that point, which is why we update every 5 years, you
Yeah.
decide to move things around, or delay things, do things sooner.
That'll be a bonded item anyway.
Maybe, free cash.
For free cash.
Free
yeah.
cash.
It's a
All right,
good year.
thank you very much, I appreciate your
Thank you
time.
very much. And I'll just say, attached to that sheet too is a reduced sheet of your 5-year plan. It looks like it goes to your actual capital budget committee. And we went ahead and did a draft, but we will sit down in the subcommittee and go over this, and we'll bring it back to you in December for your first approval before it gets submitted to the town.
And for inquiring minds, the 2 faculty bathrooms in the teacher workroom, kind of next to the cafeteria entrance, we had some flooding, so the flooring was replaced this week. And we went with a prototype, if you will, of what ultimately we think will be the hallway flooring. So you'll be able to see it's new and different products since last time we tiled umpteen decades ago.
Did you get the hallway? Did you get a good hallway number?
No, I did check in with Peter and Ralph, and because they were doing the bathroom on an emergency basis, they haven't had a chance to do the measuring for the hallways, so that's still coming. We were lucky to get them.
I thought the guy
I
came
know.
out like
He
3
didn't.
weeks ago.
He didn't come out that day,
Okay.
but he did come out and do our emergency bathroom, so he can't really complain.
All right, community comments. So, I asked Addie May to have some community comments, and so we have a lot of wonderful information, which is this stuff here. Because there's warrant articles that concern this, and because of, it concerns the schools because of development, and we had talked about making sure we're up to speed on new development because of its potential impact on schools, I asked you to come. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. So, as everyone in Sherborn knows, we've had the last 2 years a lot of 40B activity and a major learning experience on what 40B is and how it affects towns, and that it's something that every town is dealing with. The state is really pushing across the board that we need to add housing, and both affordable and in general, the state feels we need to add housing numbers, so which is a challenge for Sherborn. And one of the biggest challenges is always how it affects the infrastructure, and there's not a lot of sympathy from the state for the argument that it taxes our police, it taxes our infrastructure, and one of Sherborn's most valuable infrastructures is our schools, and we already know we have a high tax base. So there are the warrant articles for our town meeting, and this is where it's like there's so much information, so trying to whittle it down to the bare bones. So the bare bones are, I really hope everyone can come out on Wednesday, December 6th at 7 p.m. at Town Hall. I mean, not at Town Hall, sorry. Special town meeting, Wednesday, December 6th at 7 p.m. at Pine Hill. So it's at Pine Hill. The Little Mermaid will be at the Dover Sherborn. So if you want to go the next night, that's a great time to go. But please, Wednesday, December 6th at 7 p.m. at Pine Hill. There are a total of 5 warrant articles, and so it won't be a long meeting. The 2 that we're really concerned with are 1 and 2, so they're right off the bat. The first article is just changing some language in our EA zoning. Our EA zoning is for elderly affordable. It sets aside, it's how Abbey Road was developed. It is a process that allows for denser development than we're used to in Sherborn. It allows for 4 units per acre, but it does keep it under Sherborn's bylaws. So it follows our Board of Health, our Conservation, our Planning Board, and a project gets approved. And there's, right now, there's been a preliminary site plan, and then if town supports it, there will be further vetting. It's not the end of the road. So the big change on the Article 1 is removing a 1-mile restriction. The 1-mile restriction was done years ago with the thought that dense development should be in the town center where there's walkability and access to services that you have in a town center, especially for the elderly component, and also for the affordable component if someone has 1 car perhaps. And what has been learned as we look at planning board stuff, that it makes a lot of sense that sometimes those services are not in our town center, but they might be in other towns. So restricting it to a 1 mile from town center keeps it, doesn't allow us to be as creative as we might want as we're trying to solve our housing deficits, both affordable and just in general, the diversity of housing that was worked on in the housing production plan. So that's Article 1, essentially, and Article 1 also includes an inclusionary zoning section, which means that if a developer is doing a dense development under our EA, they will do 10% affordable to keep us from falling backwards in our SHI numbers, our subsidized housing inventory. That's the state, it's how the state calculates our affordable numbers. And we might have houses that are naturally affordable, but the only numbers that count when we're trying to work towards this mandated goal of 10% affordable housing are the numbers are the units that the state is regulating and overseeing. So a private developer can develop these, but they have to do them in accordance and market them in accordance with the state regulations. So that brings us to Article 2. Article 2 is an ask of the town to rezone a parcel of land at 104 Coolidge under our EA zone, our elderly affordable. And it came about as some discussions with the developer. The developer had proposed Coolidge Crossing, which was 88 townhouses at 104 Coolidge. About a year ago, he submitted an application, and in some discussions, he was open to doing an alternate project of 60 ownership units that were age restricted. So this is a project that the planning board unanimously supports, the advisory committee unanimously supports. It is beneficial in that instead of 88 townhouses, it would be 60 ownership units plus an addition of 7, so that we get our 10% rounded up, 7 affordable rental, smaller rental units that will be part of this community. So it's a total of 67 units, but size-wise, it's not 67.
This is 84 Coolidge?
This is 104 Coolidge. So this is the parcel that's closer towards, it's called Meadowbrook Commons because it borders on Meadowbrook.
So if we change the one, I've missed something.
Yeah.
If we change the 1 mile restriction,
Right.
it would allow this, right?
It allows the town to use the EA. Right now, the town, without removing the 1 mile, this location is further than 1 mile from the center of town.
And then Article 2 is,
So Article 2 is project-specific. Article 1 is only the language.
Okay.
So Article 1 pertains to language, whether it's this project or any project, but it's just our town's bylaw. So Article 1 is just changing the language. It's something that was talked about as we were working through a housing production plan in general. If we wanted to do a creative project down the road, a Habitat for Humanity project, we realized we might not be able to do that, a duplex or something small even, the way our current 1, 2, 3 acre residential zoning is set up, that we might need to utilize an EA for something small. So the EA doesn't always mean a big project. It could be a small project or a big project, but right now it's limited to 1 mile from town center. And with our current water and septic infrastructure, dense development in the town center is not realistic. So opening that opportunity for being creative is a good thing. So regardless of what happens on Article 2, Article 1 is going to be important for trying to accomplish goals in the housing production plan. Article 2 certainly helps, but Article 1 is a separate issue.
okay.
So Article 2 is asking the town to vote to support rezoning 104 Coolidge under our EA bylaw, the elderly affordable. And again, that means that, so the developer has presented kind of a preliminary site plan review, which the presentation, that's this burgundy packet that I handed out, is from the developer. That's what he presented to the planning board at the planning board's hearing on November 7th. And that hearing is, it was recorded, it is on YouTube. You can listen at your leisure. There were a number of questions that were asked and discussions. The biggest benefit probably for our town is the tax revenue. So when we're thinking of schools and support, a 55-plus community has fewer kids. It wouldn't be appropriate to say no kids, because the only requirement for any age-restricted 55-plus community is that one member is 55 or older on the deed. And that's pretty much true throughout the Commonwealth. So the anecdotal evidence says that you typically have very few to none children, school-age children in a 55-plus community. But you can't, under fair housing laws, say you will not have any absolutely, because there is no way to ban children. But it could be, this Meadowbrook Commons, we believe there's been some market studies, felt that there's a need for this type of community, and certainly it will be fewer school children than an 88 townhouse with all 3 bedrooms project would be, that's not age restricted.
Okay,
And that's
so-
the 40B project that he has filed with the state. He's not withdrawn it
For 104.
for 104 Coolidge, right?
So if Article 2 doesn't pass, then that's the developer's net.
He will build, and he will build on 40B.
When do we know if that gets approved? With his 84 Coolidge Street 40B that's approved by the state? When
It's been held up in some litigation, like 40Bs typically do, so it hasn't been determined. He says he's been waiting any day for some answer, and I think there's more challenges there. And there will be some people who say, well, he'll never, that well, it's a 40B and the history has shown, it won't get built. But the actual history is,
He just won.
he won down at the Fields, and it's,
So he's putting in, same developer's putting in how many units?
It's not, it hasn't been 100% finalized at the Fields, but it will be, it's nearing completion, and it's likely to be, it's going to be 32 units instead of the original 36, but one of the building, it's the same amount of buildings as 28. So
Suffice it to say, I would say, I mean, if anybody knows where that is, it's down Western Avenue, and it's an area that's so wet. In the original plans, they were shoving these things in, and there was just, I mean, if I wanted to build something, I've got to be 200 feet from the water swamp edge. He's like building a retaining wall at the edge of the swamp. So
right.
My sense is that he's pretty familiar with the roadblocks that Sherborn
He's very
throws up.
familiar with the roadblocks, and that's another reason why, because of his familiarity with the roadblocks, he would like to work with the town on this EA version, where he knows he's going to have to come before the town scrutiny, and he's abiding in the EA project. He abides by the open space requirement. He's abiding by the wetlands, the Board of Conservation Commission requirements. So it's a lot nicer of a project as far as it's more environmentally friendly. It is also a waste treatment system and a public well. So it means that there's monitoring, there's oversight from the state level to the discharge from a waste treatment plant, just like at the high school and middle school is monitored by the state, and it has to be drinking water standards at discharge. So from an environmental standpoint, it's a better project. He plans to use the same waste treatment system if he does the 40B. So you're not picking between that, but as far as his intent is, and he's been very upfront, that if the town does not support the EA, then he will go ahead and continue to do the 40B of 88 townhouses, and the state, the
88
experience.
3-bedroom?
88 3-bedroom. And it might go into litigation if the town has the stomach for that and the capacity for that, and we might get it knocked down some, but the state, on average, has not been extremely sympathetic, and there's just, it's not, it still would be marketed to families.
Do we have any sense of how many kids 88 3-bedroom units yield?
I mean, he's got some numbers in here, and everybody's got, and all research, even though it's, data-driven by
Michael, do you have a
nationals,
number in your head?
it's like,
No, I don't think we know.
Okay.
We don't have.
Well, it's not 88.
We don't have comparables yet for homes in good school districts that are townhouse in style, but designed for families. These don't have first floor masters. It's all
Right.
bedrooms upstairs.
Okay.
Possibly Sudbury may have some data that could be of help, or Hopkinton. Natick has been running summative projects, 0.5 students, but none of them are of the nature of this, and
Okay.
schools.
And then-
But they're not our schools.
And then on 84,
so 84, which is the other parcel that he owns and intends to build, and he has submitted for an apartment building. At the moment, we are proceeding as it's not technically a friendly 40B because of the way it got filed. Technically, a friendly 40B is filed somewhat differently, but we are part of having talks, and we need the rentals because that is the only way we ever have a chance of getting to our 10% goal and saying, okay, enough, we're done with fighting 40Bs. We've gotten into safe harbor, and then hopefully we can do a couple small things just to maintain that safe harbor.
so it would be all rentals at 84.
So 84 would be all rentals. It is 88 rentals, which I know there's 88 number is out there a lot. So it's 88 rentals, and it would be, so 22 of them are affordable, but the state incentivizes rentals. So the town gets to count all 88 as on its SHI numbers.
But didn't he want to boost that?
What's that?
Didn't he want to boost that to 100 and change?
There was some talk of boosting it in making it bigger, but the capacity of the
Something
land,
well.
even under, at the moment, just given the infrastructure, there is talk of potentially, if the town supports the EA and then there's the 88, that then maybe the abutter they would have some negotiating and agreement with the abutter because there's a little bit extra land, and then we could do essentially a Woodhaven 2 and get our extra units there.
So, Article 1 just changes the 1 mile radius, which to me, that never made a lot of sense. It seemed to be arbitrary. Article 2 rezones 104,
Correct.
but there's no, so the
The,
planning board is supportive of 1 and 2.
correct. So the planning board is unanimously
And
supportive
advisory
of 1
was
and
as
2,
well.
and advisory as well, unanimous support of 1 and 2.
So the dollars, just get down to what it means to the school, in the 88, the rental units are 1, 2, and 3 bedroom, right?
There's a state requirement that 10% of them be 3-bedroom. And so there will be a couple 3-bedrooms, but the majority of them are 1-bedrooms, and then a handful of 2-bedrooms. So,
So
And-
he's got, in the presentation, he has 56 one-bedrooms, 24 two-bedrooms, and 83 bedrooms.
Does this packet have the 88 too, or?
Okay.
I know one fear people have is on the EA zoning is the fear that, well, if the town supports EA, then he could turn around and do something different, and he can't do anything except what he has proposed. There's no way to take the 40B completely off the table because that doesn't abide by local zoning. So he can always do the 40B. His intent is not. He's done a lot of kind of market research, and his maps are detailed. He's put a lot of engineering research into making the EA project, and so it's not likely to be, if the town supports it, it would be the project that's presented, and it could be downsized, it could never be increased. Any changes would require going back to town for another vote.
So the estimated value of the 104 Coolidge,
As
I mean,
far as,
in terms of what kind of tax revenue it would
so
generate?
he's,
Total? Okay. That's his calculation?
Page.
So we assume 70% of that is, I mean, that's, 30% of it would go to other town services because normally 70 or 75% of the budget goes to schools, right? So,
It's 800,000 more revenue for the town. I wouldn't
Right.
make it more complicated than that.
so it just doesn't seem like there's any downside, other than waiting for a miracle.
yeah, I mean, I think it's why it's been so far unanimously supported. I mean, the only downside are some people who just don't like it because it's big, but
There's a downside for the neighbors who live there, too. It's not,
yes, there's
got the people who live on Meadowbrook and live on Coolidge, they have.
Well, the upside is it's a much nicer, smaller, I mean, it's going to go there,
Well,
right?
wasn't there some kind of restriction that he ran against that, because the two projects were too big combined?
So when he first presented when he originally filed here, he filed the 88 townhouse,
Done that.
and he filed the rental building at the same time. And the town argued that the two projects at the same time constituted a too large project. And there's a rule at the state that if you do at the same time any project that increases the total housing inventory of a town more than 6%, that it's too large of a project. And that's also why that 88 number came about. So the reality is, though, there is nothing at a state level that bars a developer from doing a development and then getting it passed that's 88 units one year, and then the next year doing another. It's only when it's simultaneous at the same time. So.
And then I heard that some of the housing planning committee was split on this, is that correct? I just wanted to
So,
hear both
right.
sides.
Yeah, so the Housing Partnership Committee that I'm on, and I'm going to invite, and Libby Yon is here as well, and in case I misspeak. There was some split. Some of it was just a general, there's a degree that some people on the committee just don't trust the developer. And that's, there's not much that you can help that. I mean, right now, we have to work with the developer that we have in front of us, and that's part of the housing production plan that says one goal will be to look at the pipeline projects and see if we can try and shape them to be better for our town than what we are being forced to accept. So, and the other concern was there was concern with it legally linking in order for the housing production plan to really, for us to get to our 10%, we need the rentals. So they're linking the rentals with the EA has been.
But they are linked because of the water treatment, right? Aren't they?
Right, I mean, the infrastructure is being designed for the EA and the rentals together. So, I don't know, Libby, is there something else that?
There's also, in the housing production plan, presented 10 strategies for developing affordable housing. And depending on your perspectives, you give different weight to it. So one of them was incremental growth. And the members of the housing partnership who are opposed to these two articles, they are very strongly in favor of incremental growth. And our argument is incremental growth. Sherborn hasn't done incremental, I mean, those of us who are supporting this, our argument is Sherborn hasn't done anything substantive to do incremental growth since Leland Farms was built in 1999. And so that keeps us open, keeps the town open to Chapter 40Bs. So that's why I voted for supporting this project. But I think it's the best proposal for getting us, and you've heard the admin use the phrase safe harbor, and that is a very important concept in 40B because it gives the town control. But the deal is the town is making progress toward meeting its 10%. And with this project, we would be in safe harbor at least until 2022 with the two projects, the EA development and the 88 rentals. Whereas if we don't do this, we're not in safe harbor for very long. And safe harbor is what gives us the opportunity to find a developer to do, as Addie was saying, these smaller projects, projects around town. The only other thing I would like to add to what Addie has already said is the impact on the neighbors. It's very true, but there are already also 3 40B projects that are permitted and in various stages of development in Sherborn that are impacting those neighborhoods. So it's not as if the Meadowbrook community is the only group that in Sherborn that's having 40B. One of the projects is on Whitney Street. One of the projects is on Western Washington, and one is on North Main Street. So those are 3 different areas of town.
Yeah, I guess that was probably one of the biggest things. The idea of a lot of people liked the idea when we were doing the writing of the housing production plan of small and slow and sustained, and a lot of times the numbers, we needed 7 SHI units a year. We just needed to add 7. And that sounded good until it hits you that the reality is most developers are going to do ownership units, and that means that you're building 28 houses a year. And then you start thinking about, okay, where are we going to build in Sherborn 28 developments that are the size at 28 houses a year, and trying to build rental units, 7 small rental units every year is also even just to think about where that looks like around town is challenging.
Hang on.
I have one more brief comment to that.
Just hang on. Hold on. Anybody, so I want to thank you so much, and I want to start wrapping this up. Does anybody else have any questions?
If I do have a question.
Okay.
May I ask it?
Sure.
If we do nothing and just allow for growth, what would that look like for, say we have 2,000 houses, residences in town now? What would it look like? How much would it have to grow to get to our number? I mean, we're talking like adding 100 units, or what's?
That was gonna be, so it's hard to do rental projects like Woodhaven. In Woodhaven, would be a much more complex project today than it was when it was originally built because of current public health water rules. So if you're fulfilling our need to hit the 10% quota, it would be a 50% increase in the total number of units in the town before we reached a permanent safe harbor status. So that's 760 new units to town, and if they were not age restricted, you can even do a brief calculation to say, we're looking at major infrastructure issues, particularly with the schools. So by opting towards a support of both warrant articles 1 and 2, instead we're setting ourselves up for 800,000 of incremental revenue and maximizing the capacity to build a rental unit at the adjacent property on Coolidge. Using the rental loophole. So that is completely different, to me, scenario of what this town would look like in 10, 15, 20 years.
So, okay, thank you. It just seems to me, having been somewhat involved with the one fields, if there's an opportunity to sort of max out and reach safe harbor, it's going to save a lot of other people a lot of pain and money, paying for lawyers to fight it, because it's going to be, it seems like it would be happening everywhere. That's my opinion. But
In the
anyway,
town as well, I mean,
the
financially.
The least worst decision. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
Is there something else you wanted to say?
I'd like the chairman to entertain a modification to the agenda to consider a motion for support of Articles 1 and 2, endorsing by the committee.
So Scott thinks we should endorse, have a favorable opinion towards Article 1 and 2 as a committee. So does anybody have any objection to the committee when it's completely appropriate for the committee to vote on an article? My understanding is, from the school attorney, does anybody have any issue?
I had a question. There were letters submitted by other departments in town to this, about these projects. I saw it on the selectmen's meeting from
The letters that were submitted as part of the standard mass housing site review process, and those were for the rental project. So those were letters that, I mean, the planning board crafted a letter that had made some suggestions about screening and how things were cited and how to, and those, basically Mass Housing takes all those comments and shares those with the developer.
So is that something that we weren't solicited to do that from our committee, but other committees did submit that?
Right, other committees did, and I'm assuming the reason the school board was not asked is because essentially the state of Massachusetts and Mass Housing have made it very clear that you can't use school and children and school infrastructure as
a reason not to build it, right? Yeah.
So, kind of.
Okay, so does anybody have an objection to the committee well, we can't stop Scott from making a motion.
You can discuss the motion after I make it if you want.
Well, you got to get a second.
That's right.
Does anybody have an issue with that? Okay, Scott, you want to make your motion?
Okay,
Do you have it written up?
I do.
Oh, God.
Well, because there's some whereas in it, which automatically might throw off some people.
No, can we keep it simple that the school committee votes to approve Articles 1 and 2 at the special town meeting?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Is that,
There was
okay,
a separate question.
Read it.
No, I'll make a simple motion.
Okay.
I move that the Sherborn School Committee supports Articles 1 and 2 at the special town meeting for the rezoning for EA.
Okay.
Is there?
Second?
Second that.
Oh, we have a second. Lucky.
All right. So now,
Any discussion?
I got the lottery.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Raise your hand. Aye.
Well, before the motion's voted, there is opportunity for discussion.
I just asked for
But
it.
we could separate the two, but you already made that motion
I
as
just,
one.
I asked for discussion. Nobody said anything.
Okay.
But would you rather
can amend-
separate them?
I asked Scott, and he said he wanted to do them together.
I'd prefer to keep them together.
Okay, all right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Were you were, Angie?
Voting
No,
abstain.
I'm at the die,
Okay.
just so we can.
Okay.
Motion passes.
That was smooth.
That's a no.
To no. So passes 4-1. Thank you very much for your time, and sorry to take everybody's time, but it's important. Okay. One, community comments.
Fortunately, the budget
CSA.
discussions will go quickly, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're going to go super fast. All right, item 4, reports. The principal's report. I can either turn it over to you, and you turn it over to Barbara, or we can go directly to Dr. Brown.
So you have a report that shows a lot of the enrichment programs and special activities that have happened since our last school committee meeting. I'm always impressed when I see the robust professional development that folks engage in. Greg, you had asked for a summary of the content areas that we teach by grade level.
Yes.
And I provided a copy of what we fondly call at Pine Hill, the instructional non-negotiables. These are the parameters that teachers are expected to set their instructional schedules by. And then I gave an example of what an instructional schedule might look like on any given day in grades K through 5. This presumes that there's no special programs, there's no fire drills. It also presumes that children miraculously transition from one subject to the next,
Perfect.
which is not how it works in elementary school.
But at Pine Hill, it does, though.
Well,
After the third
I mean,
day.
cleanup alone at the end of kindergarten free choices, sometimes as long as the activity itself. We've also been very intentional in trying to build in more movement and get your wiggles out for at all of our grade levels in between, and not go right from subject to subject, if you will. As you are aware, students do not have Spanish every day. It's 4 times a week in kindergarten and first grade, and we have a 3 times 40-minute model at second, third, and fourth grade. So the examples I put in front of you presume that it's a Spanish day. When it's
Okay.
not a Spanish
Great.
day, it gives teachers a little more instructional time to prolong perhaps science, social studies, special project, and many things creep into our schedules that we value at Pine Hill, such as buddy visits, which are content-based, I would argue, reading or some curriculum theme-driven. All-school meeting, our beloved all-school meeting on Friday morning. So teachers are always wiggling
Right.
their instructional schedule. They might make an intentional choice to run a math lesson particularly long because of the needs of students.
Right. So,
Teachers are somewhat time-bound, particularly if they have students in their class that are being serviced through special education or English language learner instructional support, because those specialists are time-bound. So teachers need to stay somewhat on content.
this is great. It helps me a lot. I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. And I've got some questions, but if other people have questions, I'd like to just hold them, and maybe people, if you've got questions, I've just got a couple simple ones, we can maybe put them together, and if you could answer them at your leisure. But this is very helpful. Thank you.
We picked up, as you know, with having fewer early release days this year.
Well, that's
We
right,
picked
yeah.
up 30 hours. On those days, we now feed and recess students. So we picked up
That's
about
just this
20
year.
instructional hours this year, which I know gives teachers some breathing room. especially where we're very committed to the FLES Spanish program. But teachers are always, they,
How does that, aren't there's a certain number of teaching minutes that you've got to hit every year, and now all of a sudden we've got an extra hundreds?
the state requires us to have 900 hours time on learning, and they have certain parameters. We can count, we can't count lunch, but we can count.
But all of a sudden we've got 20 extras. That means
So
we
have
get
20
out
extras.
3 days,
So
3 days early?
We well meet our time on learning requirements. And don't forget, in Dover Sherborn, we go 181 days.
Versus, was it, the minimum is 180?
It used to be, 180 is the requirement. So,
Well, I remember the discussions
Reduced from
last year,
183,
the,
right?
182.
there was the problem trying to make the FLES program happen with so many early release Wednesdays. Wasn't that the main the main reason to look at restructuring, or at least removing some of those early release days?
I think in general, our educators are happy to have more instructional time for all content.
Sure.
And as we're making a concerted effort to do more inquiry-based science and hands-on science, there's certainly opportunity, as some of my footnotes down there, social studies and science themes are certainly integrated into math, reading, and writing. But with our new science materials and curriculum
Yeah.
units,
So
there's more standalone
Less
lessons.
singularity weekend where you're combining several rigors in one activity.
Yeah. Again, teachers are connecting all of that, but we really, teachers are really wanting more science instructional time, as the standards intend. So we're always.
Juggling. Thank you very much. Is that it? Any other questions for Dr. Brown? Go to Ms. McCoy's.
Sure. So I did provide a written report, and I will keep my comments brief. I would just like to point out that we had our first meeting of the Professional Development Committee, and I know that has been a topic of interest, especially around contract negotiations and early release days. We had the meeting come together. We had a great conversation about what the objectives of professional development are, what it should look like, what it should not look like. And what was exciting at the end was, after we did this whole brainstorm up on the board of the vision of professional development moving forward, I presented them the plan for our full day of professional development on November 27th, which we'll be engaging in as a district K through 12, and it met almost all of the standards they had set forth. So there's a lot of excitement around the 27th, and we're hoping that this will evolve into some positive movement in the professional development arena
So
moving forward.
there was a professional development committee already, right? But they just didn't do anything. So part of the contract negotiation, I mean, I was very impressed that the teachers really wanted meaningful professional development, which is great. So is there going to be some feedback mechanism to make sure they're getting what they want? I mean, you're all going to sit around in the committee and they're going to let you know if it's not.
Absolutely. So, I mean, coming out of the 27th, for example, we're going to have some sort of exit survey, and we'll get feedback from all of the educators.
Okay. Oh, good.
And then we'll be coming back together as a professional development committee, I believe in December, to review that and talk about next steps. And, I think the bigger plan is going to be looking at, a full year ahead. So Andrew and I started July 1st, so this year was already set, but we'll be working with the school leadership and the PD committee to plan next year thoughtfully to make sure that we meet the goals of the district and the school goals. And one of the other things that we talked about as a committee is just the importance of the professional development that's embedded in the school day. Professional learning doesn't only happen on early release days and full professional development days through common planning time meetings and the pineappling and visiting each other's classrooms. There's so much rich learning going on for the adults that we need to capitalize that and learn from each other throughout the schools of how we can improve that.
Is the program on the 27th, is that something you and the committee are synthesizing, or is that you've invited in, like, was there something like a package that is being brought in? I mean, is that all being created
it's
from?
homegrown.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's following along with the idea of social emotional learning and looking at the identity of each child and what sort of pieces they bring to the puzzle. And we're offering, I think, 19 different workshops on race, religion, education.
Wow.
So teachers can choose, which we know is a big desire of theirs. And there'll be some time for team building as a K through 12, pre-K through 12 district, everybody together. We're all in this as educators. These are all of our kids. So hopefully all the pieces come together that day and it all goes well.
But you should mention you invite everyone, the EAs.
Oh, and educational assistants, administrative assistants, custodians, everybody has been invited. So when you add all those numbers together, it's nearly 400 people. And although the custodians will likely be in the buildings without kids doing special projects on that day, we're hoping that they'll at least join us for the kickoff and lunchtime so that we can have some collaboration.
This was really a grassroots effort that kind of evolved out of our summer leadership retreat, the leadership team. Throughout my entry meetings, all of the leaders in the district, each and every one of them identified cultural responsiveness, cultural awareness as a priority, but as it links to social emotional well-being. So we're looking at it from multiple angles, and that's the beauty of this day. It's a number of different sessions looking at all the different kind of ways kids are impacted through their cultural experience. It's not just racial, it's not just gender, it's all of the above. We have kids who academically don't fit and struggle with that. That's part of the cultural experience for them. And that people may not be as aware of what it's like to live like that as a student. So this is very much connected to the social emotional well-being. And the feedback from the faculty, just looking at the options to sign up for, has been amazing. So we're really, really, really proud, frankly, of Dr. McCoy and Monique Veal, our METGO coordinator. They really spearheaded this thing. We think it's going to be fantastic, and we're thrilled that we were able to get everyone included, because if you think about it, who's on the front line when a kid walks into school every day, or a family walks into school, but the secretaries, our administrative assistants. So we're thrilled that they will be there too. So it's really, we've spent a lot of time on it. We had some training ourselves, so we're really excited about this.
Sounds great. So you'll let us know how it goes.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Keough.
Yes, so I also am going to try and keep this very quick. The budget obviously has been consuming a lot of our time, developing the budget for Pine Hill School and also for Dover and for the region. But it's a good process, it's a healthy process, and we feel very much invested in that. So you'll hear more in a few minutes. I'm happy to report that at this point I am no longer holding entry meetings. So to satisfy the insatiable desire to meet with the superintendent in these two towns has not been easy. People still call. Is he still holding those meetings? So I've had a lot of meetings. They've been great, a really wonderful opportunity to learn. And I've actually now coded the information that I've picked up, and we'll share that, my findings with the leadership team. And I'm still on schedule to share with the joint committees my initial draft of a strategic plan for the system in January. So I'm happy about that. Did have a snow emergency meeting. That storm a couple weeks back really shook me to my foundation, because I was concerned about a possible delay. And I hadn't yet done the school messenger system here. It doesn't mean I wouldn't have figured it out. I've used school messenger the past 3 years, but I was still nervous about it. Connecting with the police and fire departments and highway departments from both towns. So we actually had a meeting. It was an excellent meeting, and I feel like we're in a much better place on that, and actually did a test run today, and it worked like a charm. So
Do you have a backup just in case you have a mental lapse and forget how to do it?
Yes, we do. And I have the phone number of the person who's the techno guru in the system, so I can call him in the event of emergency. No, I'm pretty confident we're going to be okay with that. And then, of course, you can read for yourselves. I've had a great time with the visits at the school with the CSA. I had lunch, actually, with the kids, including our own Jennifer Devon's son. Was it Ryan?
Grant.
Oh, Grant.
Yeah,
Graham.
fourth grader.
Sorry, yes. Yeah, that was fun.
We had a good time.
That's good. It was, meeting with the boys, just the boys, was interesting. They,
Fourth grade, we
kind of have to pull the information out of them.
They
you know?
don't- they don't-
What do you like?
they don't-
Recess. Sports. What don't you like? The food, you know? No, they didn't complain about the food. I take that back. May have been another conversation.
I was gonna say, yeah.
No, they weren't complaining about the food. They were very
They
good.
wanted to play baseball at the lower.
That they did say. They want to go down to the lower field. Yep, that was a priority for them. So, good conversation with them. It's so cool being the superintendent in my hometown, I can't lie. The kids came to my house, there was a whole bunch of them saying, "Happy Halloween, Mr. Superintendent." I felt like the president. It's kind of cool. But, so things are going very well, and you can read the rest there. I also want to thank the DSEF for their efforts in the gala. We had a great time there. All the administrators went. We had a wonderful time, so that's it.
Great, awesome. Any questions for the superintendent on that? Let's see, no. All right, so we got item 5, which is a handout, right? The monthly financial report.
It's short and sweet, so unless you have any questions, the big change you'll see in your November statement is that all of the central office and shared positions have now been reflected on the financial statements. So they are both the expenses and the encumbrances, so you can get a better feel of where we stand with salaries. We are projecting about a $40,000 savings in your educator line between the classroom teachers and the classroom special ed teachers, which is due to staffing changes that happened post-budget.
Or half of two.
And there really is nothing to report on the operating expenditure side. Out of district, we did have one additional potential placement since we last met, and so it's partially reflected in your financials. When the placement's finalized, we will then update your.
So it's a new out-of-district placement? Can I ask the question, there was, something has been pending for a year?
Still
Is that,
pending.
is that
Still
this,
pending.
or that's still pending?
That's still pending.
So there's another potential placement
Yes,
looming?
in the works. We'll know more next month.
Okay, all right.
But the good thing is you already had a positive variance, so there was some leadway there to work with.
Right, okay. Any questions on that? Nope.
Sorry.
Nope, okay.
There's-
Question?
For the salaries, you say there's a projected positive variance of 40,000, but I see right now there's a difference of almost 100,000
No,
between.
you have to, just in the teachers, just in the
Oh,
two teacher
okay, I'm looking at the bottom line here.
Yes, it's
It's line
just in
specific.
just in the
Okay.
educator staffing
Okay, thank you.
lines. So the two where there's one that says
Yeah.
23,000 and the 21,000.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We don't project a lot, like, because the custodial services, that's their overtime and other services.
Right.
Substitutes, those things are gonna
Yeah.
get, will dissipate as the year goes
Yeah,
on.
okay.
So I only really announce what I know is sort of really set in stone at this point.
Custodial services include salaries of the custodians, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, up that line up there is only salaries.
That's,
Oh,
yeah,
it's
that's,
just
Mm-hmm.
salaries?
that's not the
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah,
So
that's
you
not-
have two custodial services?
Exactly. You've got salaries and then you have your operating expenses.
Got it. Okay. Any questions? All right. Item 7, the 2017 academic testing, MCAS.
So I provided for you an overview of our students' performance on the MCAS, grades 3 through 10 in all 3 districts. I know that we slated a deeper conversation with some of the analysis that Dr. Brown has done with the teachers at Pine Hill for December, so we'll revisit this. But generally speaking,
Okay.
I think our students and teachers should be commended for their performance. As we know, as a state, the next generation exams, we saw a dip in performance overall. However, Sherborn and Dover students continue to perform at or above their peers in similar towns.
So for what we get to see in December, in the past, we've had a really long presentation, and I guess I would just say, unless people have specific questions, and maybe there are more questions about this because next generation and that type of thing, don't kill yourself, I guess is what I would say.
If that's a directive, I'll gladly follow that.
Well, I mean, it's
Do you want
nice
us
to
to share a
have,
little bit about the legacy versus the next generation,
Well,
like some of the shifts?
Well, I have a question about that, but.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just saying, in the past, it seems like it's something that took you forever to, it was just a ton of information. And if we get the report, we can sort of read it and we can ask questions. We just don't need to spend an hour on it because it just seems like it takes a ton of your time. And it's always kind of the same stuff, that this area dropped, this area went up. And, by the time they get to the 5th grade, everything's great.
So I'll provide you a summary of the test construct, what's the same, what's different, and more importantly, how we go through as a faculty and glean some findings from that, so you understand our process?
Yeah.
No PowerPoint, just a written report?
If you can do PowerPoint if you want, I guess I'll just say you don't need to spend,
Okay.
so much of your time for something for us. I do have a couple of questions about this, but Scott?
For the MCAS that was taken last year, I guess referred to as MCAS 2.0, was there some stages that we elected to, there is a procedure we elected to follow over the past couple of years at Pine Hill that may be different from other districts, I recall? Like we could either transition immediately 2 years ago, or we would take an interim step. Is that the case? Maybe elaborate on that, and then I have another question based on the answer there. If I can.
Follow-up question.
That's right. So there may be a difference on what we did last year for this result compared to what we did the year before and what other schools did 2 years ago? Is it the same? Has everyone done the same migration to 2.0?
You're recalling that some school districts went to Park and some stayed with MCAS?
Yeah.
Thinking that we were ultimately all going to Park. That was the state's thinking at that time.
We did Park.
We stayed with MCAS.
We
The
stayed with
state
MCAS.
decided not to go with Park.
Okay.
And instead came out with the next generation, MCAS, which is Park-like. So I understand your confusion.
So when looking at these results and recognizing that it was a change, so you can't do legacy, and even just comparing town to town, is there something to be differentiated between a town that did Park, then MCAS, versus a town that stayed the course similar to us?
That would be somebody's excellent action research.
But the state suggested not even comparing the
Just,
test. to
I'm thinking
anything
more,
in the
you know,
past.
when
That's
sometimes it's not the
what
content that was a challenge for the kids, it was the actual taking the test. So it's, is there something to be gained, especially if, I wasn't sure if we were in a situation where we delayed exposure to this new test structure, which isn't the case. So
And
we
whether
actually
our
had-
students were disadvantaged.
Yeah,
or
like
not.
if that, how much of a, and then if that was the case, then maybe we should only, if we're trying to compare to other towns, screen out to isolate, just that 2-year history.
So, may I speak? The student growth percentile, which shows basically a student who was proficient last year, how much growth they had versus everyone else who was near their score last year. It's a good actual measurement of value added in any given year. So when the state tried to compare either the old MCAS or Park to MCAS 2.0, they actually deducted points for students who had taken paper-based tests, realizing that the kids who had taken it on the computer were at a little bit of a disadvantage because it was new and different. So they tried to make up for that. So if you look at the comparisons for student growth percentile, they're calling it transitional growth percentile now. They've tried to compensate for that.
So
We've stated maybe.
the full, I normally look this up, but I haven't this year. I'm assuming the full report's on the state website, right? All the data that you'd ever want to see. So in December, we're going to have a more detailed discussion about the budget, which will take some time. So, but before I say, don't kill yourself over a presentation, I guess, does anybody want a PowerPoint and highly detailed step-by-step presentation? Or if you think you do, let me know. I guess my concern would be, I kind of always ask this question about like, what now? Because the kids took this in March. There's been 5 months of stuff going on. I'm just curious about, and now, when it was like 30% needs improvement or whatever, now it's maybe 50% in the 3rd grade or 42 or whatever. what do you do? How do you catch? Some kids have to be caught up at some point, and how do you keep them from falling behind? And how much ultimately does it really matter if by the 10th grade you got 100% that's advanced and proficient? You know?
Why sweat grade 3 when they still
Well, I mean,
emerge? Yeah,
and in this particular case,
when the system.
I'm just really curious about Dover versus Sherborn in the 3rd grade ELA, the different in percentages, 70 versus 58, and then it just flips the next year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to make you think,
In
there ain't a
some-
whole lot to the test.
And the
It's
cohort
not
of.
telling you a whole lot, all right?
The cohort of students that you as a school committee, remember I would talk about this wondrous, loquacious group of students, and you added an extra ed assistant, and ultimately we added an extra section. That cohort of students, now 6th graders, have the highest percentage of advanced and proficient in science in the state for 5th grade. So you see, the variance is,
Well, okay.
Your
Interesting.
It's just
question also is about like how if there's a kid that didn't perform well on the test. The teachers know that well before anything is
There's
coming
already-
out. And
yeah,
they're
there's already
probably
intervention.
way more
Well,
qualified to
you'd think they'd know it.
identify something.
but I'll talk to you in general
Well,
and
that's
how
fine.
we can look cohort from cohort,
Well, it's gotta
within a grade
be, I mean-
level, teacher to teacher.
The question is, what can you do?
Same
with
thing happened on math,
Fill it out
too.
if they wanted to by teacher and by
Where
school.
Dover's 86, we're 62, this is 3rd grade, and then it flips the next year. It just makes me think.
So Greg,
Doesn't tell you a whole lot.
one of the great things about the Department of Ed in terms of analyzing this stuff is they work with Edwin Analytics. So a teacher can look at their kids' scores on a scatter plot and see who was where. They can see exactly where they were and quickly, without plowing through all sorts of information. They can see who was struggling and who wasn't. And then they can meet with other teachers who have the same kinds of struggles with kids in that grade, and that's where we do our interventions. So that's, when we're talking about response to intervention in RTI, we identify who's struggling with what material, and this data is so rich right now in terms of the Edwin Analytics. It really does allow you to see that. So and what we're looking for is individual growth as well. So we want to know that each kid is making growth. So it used to be, you could say, well, it's just a bad group of kids, and
We
people could
never
hang
said
their-
that.
People, no, I'm not saying here, in other towns.
Ne'er-do-wells.
Not here. But no, but people could say, it would be very easy for someone to say, oh, it was just a really challenging year, a really challenging mix of students, so,
Presumably,
what
you've got
can I
a
say?
certain number of kids on IEPs, 12, right?
Well,
That-
that's true, but most people would have accepted that. But the fact is actually, we want to see that the students have all made growth. That's a different,
Right.
whole different ballgame, so.
So, anyway, I'm sure what I asked for wasn't very clear, so if you have questions, you feel free to ask. Any other questions on MCAS on this?
I just want to make a quick comment about the language used, about like outperforming competing towns. The words that you used when you just spoke to us were, similar towns, and that is just a slight difference to say, similar demographic or similar town rather than competing. It's in the 3rd
Sure.
paragraph.
Thank you.
I don't know, it's just,
I think I just ran out of adjectives because I tried to not keep
it's just a
saying.
different vibe when you're saying competing towns.
And the state comes up with this list? This is, who generated this list
Okay, so
of towns, just out of curiosity?
if you have we have Dover, Sherborn, and then there's Belmont, Lexington, Medfield. Those are the towns that historically we've been comparing to. So when I went back through the reports over time, those are the ones we've always said, well, let's look at these towns. Cohasset, Harvard, and Hopkinton are actually the ones that the Department of Education likens us to based on population, money spent on students, and
So those are your-
and housing
Well,
value.
Yeah, because Belmont spends 40% less than we do, and they typically do quite well. But doesn't it make you think, gee, what's Hopkinton doing in the 3rd grade?
Test prep.
They're rocking it.
Yeah, they show up and they can do one year.
Practice that keyboard instead.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, almost 8 o'clock. Where are we? Policy, first reading. Do we have that?
Yes, you do. So that's a new policy that came in response to the program, coordinated program review, the CPR audit the state did,
Right.
and they picked up on a discipline policy that we needed to adjust
Okay.
in compliance with the law around suspensions. This is more of a technicality than anything else, but they're right, we should have it corrected. So we need the school committee to vote the amended student discipline policy that's attached.
Do we need to vote that now? This is said
No,
first
it's
reading.
This is the first
It's a
read.
first read, I'm sorry. Yes.
So
it's a
we'll vote
first
that
read.
at the joint meeting
Yep.
at some point.
That's right.
All right.
January, or?
Well,
I don't know if they can wait.
three readings.
It's at the first joint meeting
It is.
in January,
Okay.
yes.
That's
Okay.
fine.
All right, so, anybody have any questions on this? Or if you, in anything we discuss, if you have questions later, just let me know.
I do have a question. When a student is expelled and it says they shall be afforded an opportunity to receive educational services, do they become an out-of-district placement at that point? Or it's varied?
Could
It
be.
varies.
Could be. Certainly tutoring is usually what happens initially, but a student could then, yes, definitely end up outplaced.
The district may question an evaluation or need a temporary placement or.
But until that child is placed, they're our responsibility to educate through tutoring or whatever
And
plan.
that's the big difference. You used to be able to suspend a student long-term, and that was their problem to get their education. The state stepped in and said, actually, that's not going to cut it, because you're just basically putting these kids out on the street in some cases, in some communities. So you have to provide them with an education, even if it's not in the schoolhouse.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Vote, item number 9, vote to approve pre-K tuition.
So the principals of Pine Hill, obviously, Dr. Brown and Chickering, Laura Dayal, and Christine Smith were wisely, I think, looking at the preschool tuition fee that we charge, did some research about what other communities were charging, and made a recommendation, or are making a recommendation, that we raise the tuition by 3% for FY19. This would apply to the preschool programs. And you can see the rates there and the rates charged at some comparable school systems, area school systems.
Okay, morning rate, 5 days, $61.25. That's, so how does that, full-time?
It's,
So that's different than, how does that compare? Afternoon?
it's a half day versus full day.
Right.
But you
So-
add on,
But the full day is another 840?
Per day.
Oh,
so 5 times that for. to
4
get-
times, because
to
we
get
only
a
run
full
the
day.
program for
Right.
4.5.
It's 4.5.
so full-time only,
Okay.
but there's some full-time, so what's that add up to? 4 times 840? No, that can't be per day, what?
It's like 9,000, I think we.
9,300.
Ours?
On the next page, should be 9,000.
Afternoon rate
Oh, yeah. there
per
it is.
day annually.
It's already.
Yeah.
It's
It's a
the
total-
next page, Greg. It's the
Oh,
first
I'm
line.
sorry.
Which we are
I thought that
well
was the-
below.
That was the
some of
comparable.
them.
So it,
Oh, so this unifies, are we already?
Per
on-
day comparable.
Are we already charging same tuition rates between Pine Hill and Chickering?
Yes.
Yes.
That's, we must have done that last year.
yes.
When Chickering opened their program, they adopted Pine Hills rates.
Okay.
Can you explain that?
So
to me?
Don, am I right that a full day,
4.5,
a
not
student
5.
who's going to go 4 days,
So I'm trying.
Oh, okay.
full day, and 1 day, half day would be a tuition
5
of
times it.
$10,769?
It's not 4
That's what it would raise to?
No, I think it's, no, because it's the $6,125
Because this is 5 day
plus.
and it's
It's 6,309.
840.
It's
5 of these.
Oh, 6,309, right, yeah, yeah.
6,309.
well,
So 840 times 4
no.
Plus 6,309.
plus 6,309.
You have 4 and a half
9,660.
days. You have 5 mornings and 4 afternoons.
Which is
This is 5
9,000.
mornings times 4 for 4 afternoons.
like
I'll have to draw a
840.
picture to explain it otherwise, seriously.
Okay.
Because I
My math.
can't, words don't describe it.
Yeah,
I don't need to take
$9,669.
the math, the next generation math test.
Put you on the scatter plot.
This year, our highest tuition is like 9,300.
Okay,
All right.
so we're, like way higher?
No,
No.
look at Wayland.
Well, but.
And the other comparable,
Than most people.
the other comparable you really need
Oh,
to
God,
compare
good
yourself to,
Lord.
though, is the private nursery schools, which we didn't include any on here, but
I mean,
they're
I'd say we're right
way,
in the middle.
they're a lot higher than our public rate.
Yeah.
They're more like 15 to 18,000.
Well, and the private, excuse me, the private preschools don't really have a full-day program. Or at least they didn't. I think it was just the morning, and then you could opt for some
Like
little
lunch
extra
club.
time.
Okay,
Right, but
so,
you could extend it to,
and just out of curiosity, I mean, this is not with regard to
this is
approving
still-
this. Well, first of all, actually, let's just,
Yeah.
so I'd entertain a motion.
So moved. I move
To-
to approve the tuition.
Preschool tuition increase.
Yes, for next year.
Second?
Second.
Got a second, any discussion? All those,
Has Dover?
they're doing this at their December meeting.
We're the same.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
saying if we approve
Oh.
it and they don't, or for some chance.
It's on their agenda for their December meeting.
they're not gonna, Dover's not gonna turn down more
I was
money.
just curious how that worked.
They got plenty anyway.
Well, or we have different rates, I mean, it divorces the rates then, if they don't approve. It doesn't stop us.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Yes, opposed, none, passed unanimously, thank you. So how many, what percentage of the kids pay? Not all the kids pay, right?
It
Not all
varies
children.
every year, based on how many kids.
Based on the eligible students in special education, so
Well, I mean, roughly half, roughly
75%.
30%.
75% pay.
Good, yeah.
About 75, more than 75% of the students in Sherborn currently pay.
Okay, all right, great, thanks. Got that. Okay, introduction of the proposed budget. You want to table that till next? Okay, so.
I won't get into
No.
a great deal of depth unless you'd like me to.
So what I wanted to do with this, if everybody agrees, I kind of wanted to avoid a line-by-line discussion tonight. I wanted the administration to sort of explain whatever they wanted to explain, anything that was confusing, and if we had questions for clarification, then you can ask those. And what I'd like to do is, if you could write some detailed questions that you have, or if you wanted to get together with another member, just one, not two, and have a discussion, so write up the questions, get them to me, and we can vet them and get them to the administration, and maybe have a more precise discussion in December, because we've got to vote the budget in December, if that's okay with everybody? All right, Dr. Keough, or
Yes, no,
whomever.
I'd love to start, and then certainly lean on Don for some of the more specific details. But basically, what you have in your books are the documents that include, obviously, the entire budget itself, but then some supporting documents. And really, this process that we go through every year focuses on two key components at this point, which is our in-district operating costs, and which includes salaries and supplies and materials, and in-district special ed maintenance, transportation, and then our out-of-district special ed services. And that's for students that are in preschool up through age 22. So I want to apologize for the misprint in there. I said up to 22, and that's actually not accurate. It's through age 22. So, correct?
When they turn 22, they age out.
Oh, when they turn, sorry, my
Yeah,
apologies.
no, you were right.
So it was
Yeah, I was
right,
gonna
that's
say,
right, I'm
yeah.
sorry, I had that
Through
backwards.
21.
Okay, so that is correct, the way it reads, up to age 22. And so obviously, those two things, the in-district costs and the out-of-district costs, really drive our budget. So we look closely at our enrollments. It's one of the first things that we do. We're projecting our enrollments to be very moderate at best, but again, this is a very, very tricky thing. We don't know who's going to come during the year. It's very early in the year, quite honestly. Frequently, people move in and out, frankly, in January. That midpoint in the year provides an opportunity for families. They don't always want to wait till the summer, or they can't. So, we want to put that caveat there that those numbers are not hard and fast in their projections. And we use the same formula that you used in the past to make those projections. And I believe that sheet is in your book as well. We're thinking at this point that our assignment of sections, although we might need to shift some teachers from one grade to another where the need might be greater, we still are anticipating the need for 21 sections. As far as special education goes, our numbers right now, we're projecting an increase of around 60,000 in out-of-district costs, which represents a 5.76 increase over FY18. Last year, you had an increase of 39.47% in out-of-district. So this is, frankly, it's good news, but again, it is really, really early. It's so hard to project where kids will end up or who can move in or move out. So it's just a really inexact science. We will proceed, as you have in the past, to update the committee each month on this information so that you have a sense of where we are. Our guidance from advisory provides us with a 1.5% increase for salaries and level funding for non-salary expenditures, which I believe you've seen. And so our big ask in this budget is to increase our FLES program by 0.3 FTE at grade 5. Grade 5, we do not have FLES, and I believe it was always the vision to go all the way up. We are looking essentially at adding the same amount as we've had added in the past for that, for a grade 4 or 5. Are they receiving the same number of minutes? Yes. And so, so this first draft calls for an increase in funding of $212,153, which is a 3.05% increase overall. In the in-district, in other words, just Pine Hill, it looks to be a 2.5% increase, or 2.56 in comparison to 2.85 last year. So we're feeling pretty good about the budget. Again, I would expect you to have questions or thoughts or insights. And the good news is that we still have another round of conversation before you have to vote your preliminary budget.
And it is just preliminary.
Yep.
Was that kind of?
That was it, yeah.
Can Vicki or Susan, could you summarize guidance for us? Would you want to do that? I mean, we can read it, but effectively, with your guidance of salary increase of 1.5%, that looked like it was about 70, right? That was like 77,000 or something like that. That's what you're.
Yep, $76,850.
About 77,000. So effectively, as far as advisory is concerned, you say here you get to 77 and everything else, it goes, you've got to justify, you got to go fight in the pool of 437,000, right? Okay.
You should be on advisory.
So that, yeah. So to do the math, about 130, Sally's about 135,000 we're fighting for in the pool of 437. Does everybody understand what I'm referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you had so explain the process of, so it looked like 135,000 is roughly, what, 30% of the 437? And our budget as a percentage of the town's budget is 25 or 30%, so.
Do we get a
Ha-
weighted,
Huh?
do we get a weighted average? Do we,
Well, no,
or
but,
do we?
but how,
Factor in the 430 is all departments, so
We're
if
enti-
right.
region
Are we entitled to
requires-
25%?
and so, and I know you had instructions, so how is that really gonna work in terms of saying, we need another 135,000? Do you say, we need it for all these items? And,
You have to justify each particular item that you are increasing in that 135,000.
well, it's all gonna be primarily salary.
Right, so how much of the 212 done is salary? Like, a lot.
137,000 is salaries. Because I also think that you're out of district, you almost have to look separate though, because we do have other ways to, like last year, we had a huge increase in out of district, which we dealt with almost separately with the stabilization fund and such. Not that this year we don't really have as much, but I almost feel like you have to look at.
But that's an ongoing cost, though. I mean,
It is.
I mean, the thing is,
Right.
you can nip it for 1 year,
Right.
but then and then you can.
Evaluate that,
Yeah.
But what we're looking at, the 125,000 or 130,000 you said is for salaries.
Right, right.
Are those salaries part of the contractual arrangement?
Yep.
Or those are contractual numbers?
Almost all of our salaries are
So
contractual.
the increase on every one of these is from
Well,
contract?
the point .3 is not contractual. I mean, it would. It's in other words, it's
program
not a part of.
Oh, no,
heads
and
that were
that's,
here.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
we're
the
not
137
contractually
does not include, because I'm looking at bringing the separate, like, for you, we'll have to write up that we're looking for a .3 plus.
Right.
And so that will have to come from.
And everything else is.
The 137 is without the
Correct.
plus,
That's
yes.
the contract, all the contracts negotiated last year by the school committee at all.
Union and non-union.
So
Right.
they're union and non-union.
Yeah.
So there's no wiggle room in any of that, so that has to be
Those are
met.
heads, you're
That's-
gonna have those heads.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the contract calls for the
So the psychologist
for the
contract and the psychologist.
for the proposed
They're-
number.
They're a teacher. The psychologist and the teacher contract, educator contract,
So all of those increases that are in here will.
are all based
And
on
now-
what we've negotiated last year in the 3-year contracts is what's.
And now the nurses are included under the
Well,
contract,
the
whereas they
nurses
were not
always been.
before.
No,
Pardon?
they were. The nurses were included.
No, but they can go up beyond.
Oh, well,
It's not
yeah.
going to have any impact. They can go beyond masters.
The only thing that's negotiable is the FLES situation. Everything else is not negotiable, you're saying?
Well, no, everything's
Because it's all
negotiable.
contractual.
Well, it's,
No,
Well, no, it's the 137, include the
no,
no.
it's not, it's not.
It's-
included.
These people were part of the contract or have
For-
become
for
part of the
levels,
contract. Right now, they're employed now.
Right.
So,
It has to be paid.
so it has to be paid for the proposed number of heads that they're proposing, right? So, yeah. In other words, you can't go back and say, oh, we're going to pay you $5,000 less.
Well,
The
for
contract-
level,
The contract has
level
a
services.
1.5%.
All of our non-union contracts for fiscal year 19 call for a 2% salary increase.
So
That's the negotiated.
so with regard, as we move along,
That wasn't shared amongst the towns or with advisory in advance, so none of the contractual information came our way. So we did our advisory decision without knowing any of that information.
Okay, I thought the contracts had all
what
been
info,
shared.
I'm sorry, without knowing,
2%, I didn't know that 2% was the negotiated rate for,
All the other contracts.
That's-
yeah, I didn't know that.
that's probably a
information.
pretty valid point.
So the contract information needs to work its way down to the respective towns and advisory in order for us to be able to provide guidance that's maybe
Yeah.
more relevant.
Well,
or more.
right, but that's all, it was all, well, the school committee voted it. It was in June so it was done because the teacher's contract lasted far longer, things were pushed back, and that was delayed, unfortunately, and with the non-teacher's contract, there's not a lot of discussion with the school committee, which it'd be nice to change it, but there just isn't a lot. There's no steps and lanes. It doesn't grow wildly like the teachers' contracts, because there's no steps and lanes in any other contract, right?
No.
Right. So as we move forward, that justification is going to be important for us to see how that's going to be fairly detailed in terms of how that's justified and how we get on board with, the delta there.
Right.
Also, the reallocation and reassignment, that's all contractual too?
No.
I don't know, that
How the heads are used are the administration's.
reallocation was more of a reclass, that particular one, where it's just splitting where it was getting charged. But yeah, the reassignment, there is an EA that is assigned to a student who's moving on to the middle school.
Technically, that doesn't have to continue.
Right, but we had taken a regular ed EA away to cover that, so we wouldn't have to add another body. So we're putting.
I would like to, I'd like to hold off on the line item sort of discussions until December, till our next meeting, where.
Because we're just gonna get questions.
Yeah, I get it, and that's why I want to have a detailed conversation in December about this stuff and get everybody's questions, and so we can have a shorter than normal meeting. And it's not the end of, it's just us approving a budget, of something to give to the town, so it by no means is the last budget. So, does anybody have any questions about stuff in the budget book, or like?
Some of the stuff in your folder tonight, if it has 3-hole punch, it's meant to go into your binder to start building the different tabs. So the historical staffing report goes behind, it goes in tab number 2 at the very back. You have a fiscal year, you have your budget, then you have the fiscal year 19 summary of staffing, and then you have the historical staffing that goes behind that. So that goes in there. Then you also, in your, I think, have an additional enrollment form. That's 3-hole punch that's in your folder. That goes in tab 3.
So can you, this number's bouncing around, 397, 396. The report we got, this report that we got in the October meeting says 397. The report, total number of kids, 2017-18.
So there's
397, the one we got in the book is 396, and now the new one is 397. And they all say October 1st.
So the October, did we change the October 1st?
Everybody, it's just,
The fourth grader.
what?
Yeah.
Looks like fourth.
Well, it was there, then
Changed
they all say October 1st.
There's one student difference.
We've already had
And
some migration.
I think she was trying to make all the reports consistent, which is why you had.
Well,
it's a couple.
it was there, then it was gone, now it's here again. So it was 397, then it was 396, and now it's 397.
Well, we lost 2.
So
There's,
on the sheet that the 5-year projections, that is
Well, but we
driven,
gained a
those
K,
formulas are predicated on using October 1st
I'm
data.
not
On her
talking about
first.
not talking about formulas, I'm talking about this number right
I
here.
know, but she had taken, she had used November 1st data the first go-around. And I said, go back and put the October, because this was whole predicated on October 1st data, the projections.
But we already had a report. So the one in the book was from November, you're saying?
Yes.
Even though it says October?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So then she
That's
switched
where
it
the
back
mistake
to,
is.
exactly.
so what
So
we
the real
reported-
number is still 396.
As of October 1st, the real number is 396.
That's okay.
November 1st, the number's now 397, because
Yeah,
they picked up.
but what we reported
Yes.
to the state is 396, and this is just mistitled.
This sheet should say, instead of October 1st, I think in the past it said October 1st, and then you had another one updated November 1st, then another one updated, and you go through the year updating those. So this is an updated one, but I don't think that October 1st at the top got corrected. Is that right?
Right. I think that's, otherwise, I think this sheet supersedes, and when I see October 1st, I'm thinking it's a
Yeah,
reported
well,
figure.
We will.
We'll definitely get
we
it
will
straightened
figure
out.
that out.
So we're pretty sure it's 397.
It's 390,
How many kids?
it's 397, yes, as of now. Actually, no, I think you're up.
All right.
We promise to get that straightened
Yes.
out.
That one student.
I'm sorry. Where were we before that?
I was just saying that, make sure that you put the things that are 3-hole punched in your book so that you have them going forward.
Yes, ma'am.
May I ask a question?
You certainly.
Just trying to understand one line item.
Yeah. Yes, understanding, justification,
Right.
no, understanding, yes.
In the line item that is called under functional curriculum leadership.
Is this on the,
It's on the big thing.
okay. What page?
First page. The item that's called classroom teacher specialist.
Yes.
The change is the 67,000.
Yes.
So adding a .3 FTE to the Spanish program at Pine Hill School is going to cost $67,000 in new salary.
No, because there's salary increase in that also.
It includes,
That-
that is kind of unclear, though. I mean,
Yeah.
it includes, that 67 includes, it doesn't consist of completely, it includes .3 FTE. So you might just add that.
Right, so that's why
Just might
it's
add that
more,
number.
yeah.
Oh, so there's a salary number and then.
And the addition of the teacher. It's in that 67,000.
And that's
There's the
roughly what?
increases to the FLES teachers that are in existence plus the .3.
Well, no, it's the salary increase for all teachers who are gym, music.
Oh, sorry, yes,
all the
specialists, not just
specialists.
sign
So
language.
they're contractual.
They're contractual plus the addition of a .3. I guess I'm just assuming you know it's salary, that we are increased the salaries. And I'm giving you an explanation of why things are more.
So I think we need to understand, can I?
Well,
have a moment?
yeah, that's me.
Yes.
For the next meeting.
Yes.
So understanding contractual and more detail behind that so that we can go back and.
Of that 66,000, the FLES teacher is a little under 27,000.
The .3 ad?
Yes.
So I think for advisory's sake, they're saying,
Yes.
like, okay, let's net out anything new or reclassified or whatever else, and how much was,
Exactly.
or whatever.
Right. And I was in the process, I actually have a teacher that I've been working on, because we got the guidance like on Wednesday when we were doing this.
Well,
So we'll bring something
What's level
forward on,
sources versus.
in
there's-
December,
there's
but
no
I've already
such thing as
started, that's why I
level
know
I know.
these numbers exactly.
Get started.
Because I started working around your guidance.
That's why I had trouble even saying that. 'Cause
I will point out, just, as we continue to just make these financial statements easier for the readers, we were talking about, breaking out custodial, because everything's about your building sat in custodial services. So if you go to page 2 and look at, the middle of the page, you'll see function custodial services, 4110. That now is just really your custodial services. And if you hop down to maintenance of buildings, new function code 4220, you'll see now where we've broken out contracted services, supplies and materials, equipment, and your reserve for operating maintenance, which you used to call extraordinary maintenance, which is really not classified appropriately. That now all sits in maintenance of buildings. So I've reclassified as many numbers as I could to be consistent.
And you've reset it going back, right?
Yes, yes. So you know you've always had like that $35,000 for extraordinary maintenance. So you can see that now is called our reserve for operating maintenance under maintenance of buildings.
All right, hang on a second. Andrew, in your, or Dr. Kia, pardon me, in your letter, the population, this is just minor, you said decreased by 0.2%, it's actually 2%. the decrease from 404 to 396, just FYI, or mine has a point too.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Who's included in the SPED building leadership?
The SPED building leadership is your piece of the director of special education, your
Right.
piece of the out-of-district coordinator, your
Okay.
team chair, isn't, yeah, that's what it is.
But the team chair, wait a second, team chair is in Pine Hill, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have, every building has a team chair.
Right, okay, so it's central office and
Yes.
it's a combination.
It's a
Okay.
combination.
Can you explain it's on the second page, under superintendent, administrative assistant salary, correct allocation of admin assistant based on responsibilities? What's that
Right,
mean?
so we have, if, I'll use, it's Tricia Schmidt, and she'd been charged all to the business office.
Perfect.
But she really works for the assistant superintendent and the business manager, and in my desire to have correct financial statements, I allocated her salary to where her function code, where she really goes.
Nagging
And I will say
desire.
the Department of Ed is really starting to spend a lot of time on how school districts report their operations by function code to have consistency, because they're really looking at doing better comparative per pupil cost data. So part of this comes from every year when we file the end of the year report, we break apart how they
Right.
want us to report it. And now we're trying to make our financial statements look as much like the end of the year report as we can, because one, it makes our life a lot easier when we do the end of the year
Right.
report, but it also gives you more consistent data
report-
with other school districts.
You report, okay,
Because they look at the function codes that you see here are the function codes that are in the end of the year report.
okay, that makes sense.
And that's why our custodial services, all being in custodial services, really was not reflecting.
Thank you for adding this. In the back of tab 2, we've got the Sherborn Public Schools FY19 budget summary of staffing. Can you, in the next couple of days, can you add these numbers to this so that they look the same, just so we can see it going
Yeah,
forward?
this has more information on it, but.
Yeah, well, I didn't, is it simple enough that I can add that and I
No,
can see?
we'll do
these-
that for you.
Okay, because
Yeah.
it's kind of hard sometimes.
Yeah.
It's getting easier though. Anybody else have any questions? Right, I mean, for clarification?
Have any retirements been announced?
Oh, that's a good question.
No.
And is it November
It was-
incentive?
It was October 1st.
Oh, that was the,
Is
The incentive
the
deadline.
long, yeah,
For the incentive.
yeah.
We have retirements throughout the year, so
Right.
some people don't take advantage of the incentive.
And some of your long timers could potentially have already taken advantage of the previous stipend, which was the 9,000 over 3 years. So they don't.
But that didn't require.
No, it doesn't,
Right,
but
right,
they,
okay.
but they can't then take advantage of that.
Okay.
Vicki, Susan, did you guys have any more questions for clarification? All right.
So just so you know, I only did packets for you tonight because they're not voting their budget until December. So if there's changes from now until December, then we can have a better packet for everyone versus having to go and change all the pages.
All right, does anybody else have any questions? All right, so, like I said,
yeah, send you.
study it if you have questions. If you want to get together with one other person, do that. Or if you have questions of me, let me know. And the sooner we can get those, because they'll be busy, the sooner, if you could like do that this week, then we can get stuff to these guys so they're not working at the last minute to answer this stuff. Anything else on budget?
No, that's it.
The consent agenda, which is the minutes of October 10. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? which is the minutes of October the 10th.
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Discussion? Corrections? All in favor? Opposed? No? Okay. Passes. So item 12 is just communications for your reading pleasure. So December 14th is going to be a budget discussion and MCAS or testing sort of discussion, and I don't know what else, but we'll spend most of the time on
That was
those
the only
things.
thing that I had in addition to our
Do you have another
budget.
capital?
And
What?
Is there more capital discussion?
Maybe a
Yeah,
more
well, you'll
final.
approve your capital. As part of the fiscal year 19 budget, you'll approve your first draft of your 5-year plan. So we need to, the subcommittee needs to meet.
to drill down on that.
Yeah.
And we'll get those books
Yeah.
to review before.
Well, the yellow box that was on the last page, as far as the actual items that we're gonna submit
That's
to
a morning
capital
meeting.
committee. Went to them, but they're.
Oh, yeah. When's our next joint meeting?
January?
January?
January 11th, is it?
Oh, no, really?
What's that, General what?
Going away again?
It is,
That's none of your business. Okay.
I don't think it is the 11th, I think it's the 9th.
I think that's it. Thank you all for coming. A motion to adjourn.
It's so moved.
A second.
Second.
Discussion. Hopefully not. Everybody in favor of that? Yep. Okay, thank you.
No,
Barbara and Christine, thank you. Sorry to make it so long.